Hey everybody, and welcome back to Watch Trading Academy. Today we are going to be learning how to buy your very first luxury watch step by step. Now, as you know, here at Watch Trading Academy, we focus heavily on the opportunity of learning how to turn basic timepieces into incredible income and more incredible investment long-term opportunities. So understanding how the watch markets work, where they make sense, where they not, is a big part of what we teach. However, today we're going to talk about buying your very first luxury watch and what are the step-by-steps that you need to be following in order to adhere to a process that can eliminate a lot of the headaches found with people that typically try to buy their first luxury watches on their own. Again, there are thousands of models, thousands of brands out there that you could be picking from, and today we're not going to be analyzing which brand you should be buying over another. Every single person wears something different on their wrist based on their wrist size, their comfort zone, their styling, and what they want to maintain, but there are brands that are better than others, as we teach at Watch Trading Academy, that do better not only for investment sake, for flipping sake, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about this process because, as you guys may know, it is very hard to get a watch at an AD, meaning you can't just walk into the mall and be like, I want my first Rolex, can I buy a Submariner? The majority of people are now realizing that it's becoming harder and harder, and watches have become a very strong piece of asset that is very hard to get. Like Patek is out of watches, AP is out of watches, Rolex is out of watches, and the generic watches like Hublots, Ulysse Nardin, etc. are never worth buying when they are brand new, because you can technically buy them for 40 to 50% off on the used market. So it wouldn't make sense. The investment long-term watches like the Rolex, Patek, and APs are impossible to get new now, which is why they're usually doing 2 to 3 times MSRP. So we're going to be talking about buying a watch, your first luxury watch used, which is really where the majority of people are going to have to be looking if they want a watch. So what are the steps to purchasing your first luxury watch, or should I say your first used luxury watch? So the first step is to actually understand, right, what I call your buying power. So making a very clear decision about how much money you are willing to spend on a watch. Now, there are many people where you ask, what watch would you like to buy? They'll say, well, as long as the deal is right, I'll pay it. But the reality is that's truly not true, because the majority of people really have a number in their mind as to where the comfort zone is when it comes to purchasing a watch. Most people will look at purchasing a watch as a disposable income, meaning additional income that you will not need anytime soon. Watches are not historically good investments. While it is true that over the last decade or so, watches have continuously gone up, not all watches are considered investments, and watches as a whole are certainly not investments. Certain watches, over time, based on their horology, how long they've been around, and their following, have become longer-term investments. However, in the markets we're in over the last 2 years, people have gotten this fake ideology that all watches are just investments because the cost of goods were going up in an inflationary period. Two separate things that people in their minds combined and basically accepted as a way of the land, which is truly not true. So let's talk about buying your first watch as an actual, not investor, but rather someone that's going to use the watch. Let's take a look at how much buying power you have. What are you expecting to be willing to part with? And that is often in cash. I never recommend using credit in order to buy a disposable asset, regardless that it's going up or not. Always use your cash, because you have to be held accountable to the money you're putting on it rather than you be put in debt for it. So your buying power here is very important. Deciding, are you going to spend $10,000 on a watch, $20,000, $30,000 will matter significantly in order to make a good purchasing decision and not driving yourself crazy looking at $20,000, $30,000 models. One. The second thing you need to be doing is discovering the sizing that you'll be okay with wearing. If you're like me and you like oversized sports watches, this wears like a 44 millimeter, but most watches will go basically from anywhere from like 36 to somewhere around 45 millimeter. This is the range of sizes for the most part. Now, ladies usually wear below a 36 and really large fellows wear as high as a 48. But the majority of watches and the majority of good watches are going to be found between this range, with the majority between 40 and 42 millimeter. So one of the things you want to do no matter what is to actually go and try on these watches and understand for yourself what works. One of the worst things you can do is buy a watch thinking, oh my God, this Richard Mille looks sick, this is what I want, and go spend 200 grand on a watch, only to find yourself in a position where the watch doesn't fit your wrist, it looks ridiculous, you're incredibly uncomfortable wearing it, and you just don't want it. So if that's the case, you just move past that, and you tell yourself, you go, okay, so, I wish I would have bought this, because now you have to go through yet another transaction to dispose of the item, potentially even lose money in order to get a watch you want. So go out there and try on watches. Remember that Rolex always has watches in stock at the boutiques, you just can't buy them. But there's a lot of manufacturers that where these watches are available to at least try on, or you can go to a regular jewelry store or used jewelry store and try on the watches and really get a feel for what you like. Do you want a bracelet? Do you want a rubber band? What kind of watches you want? And then comes the third step after the sizing, which is pick 2 to 3 watches that fit the above two. So basically, you already know how much you want to spend, you know the size you want, can that be matched together, and what are the 2 to 3 watches that really appeal to you that you would want to purchase ultimately is going to be the beginning of this. Like basically understanding buying power, the sizing, and then picking the models specifically of the watches. Now you want to do some research, which matters, which is going to be a next phase, which is going to be what we call the research phase. Now the research phase matters because there's a couple of things you want to do in research. The first one is, what is the watch? Meaning now that you've described 2 to 3 watches you like, we want to also understand what is the watch, meaning what years was it made, what colors did it come in, were there variations of it. Now, more importantly then, what are the ranges of values? What does that mean? Is the watch sold between $8,000 to $12,000 based on the year and so on and so forth? Same with the watch itself. What colors does it come in, etc.? Do these colors impact values or variations? And you can just Google this looking strictly on something as simple as Chrono24 or eBay, and you'll get a good idea for what the ranges of dollars are. But in the research phase, something very, very important comes into play that is very rarely discussed on YouTube channels, and it is that the majority of listings that you Google, look up on Chrono24 or eBay actually are not in stock, and therefore the data is invalid. So can you find data that is real rather than invalid? So this makes a big difference, because let's say you go online and you go, okay, I'm about to buy this Rolex Submariner, and you Google that and you go 2017 Submariner black dial, and you go, okay, wait a minute, now this watch came up and there's 14 listings here for $9,000, $10,000, $12,000. Well, if these listings are 4 years old, or basically are old listings that were never taken down, these are data points that are not real and they're irrelevant. It's like looking up real estate and what is sold for 12 years ago and saying, I'm going to use that data to make the point today, even though today the home is worth 10 times what it was 12 years ago. So it wouldn't be accurate data point. So finding accurate data point is really simple. It comes down to being able to call the listing, which is a reputable jeweler or reputable seller, and confirm that the watch in stock, and confirm what the selling price is, and that you're not just staring at an old listing. Once it is confirmed that the watch is in hand and that the listing is real and that the dollar is not confirmed, you now have what you call a data point of dollar to know what that watch is selling for somewhere else. So the best way to get data that's real is to call 3 to 4 reputable sellers who claim to have the item, or call as many as you can until you can get 3 to 4 and use that pool of data, right? So once you have that, you basically now understand what the watch can cost between so-and-so, and you can also understand what you're actually looking for and narrow down your search. The next step, after doing all that, will come down to really making an offer, right? So why is making an offer so difficult? Well, we know jewelers are wealthy individuals because they're smart and they know what to pay and what to buy, right? We know this. This is nothing new. Jewelers are intelligent people who know how to make offers who know how to basically manipulate market and things like that, and they know they're going to be made an offer on watches and how to manipulate and negotiate that conversation. So your job is to understand the margins of jewelers and dealers and understand that the average person, the average jeweler, depending on the watch of course, can have margins anywhere between 20% to 60%. I know that's pretty crazy, right? And in some cases, in some rare instances, 200 to 300%. It really depends. But the majority of jewelers understand that they have a 20% to 60% margin from today's market if they were going to do what we call a replacement. So you see, jewelers accept offers based on replacement costs. It's as simple as this. If you offer $8,000 on a watch and the jeweler believes he can replace that watch for $6,000, he may accept your offer because he can take your $8,000, take $6,000 of it, place in the exact same watch, put it back in stock, and make $2,000 profit. But if you make an $8,000 offer and the jeweler has to pay $10,000 to basically restock that watch, well, why would they release that watch for $8,000? They typically wouldn't, especially when other people would be lined up to buy it for $9,000 to $9,500. So it wouldn't make sense for them to do that. So the majority of margins are basically 20 to 60%, and it comes down to a cost of replacement. So you have to use your wit by basically talking about the 3 to 4 real data points and then understand what you want to pay, and usually start your offer somewhere around looking between the lowest price and the highest point, taking the highest price, taking 20% less, and seeing if it still puts you around the lowest price or not. If the lowest price is still there, then minus that an additional 20%, and that will put you in a new range of what we call a wholesale dollar. Now, most people won't sell wholesale because they don't need to sell watches. They want to sell watches. So at which point you need to kind of decide what risk factor is that worth to you. So as I teach in Watch Trading Academy, one of the ways we protect our purchase is to understand what we call the bottom cash value. So the bottom cash value is basically understanding that any purchase we make comes with what we call a risk factor. So let's say you're buying a watch for $10,000. It's a very round number, it's very easy, right? But let's say every jeweler in the country would offer you $9,000 for this watch today. Now, it simply means that the difference between your purchasing price and its cash value for today is only $1,000. And while in your head you could say, well, yeah, but I'm still spending $10,000, you're not. You're parking $9,000 and spending $1,000. That's your liquidity index today if you were going to get rid of the watch for $9,000, putting you basically at a very easy place of saying, can you afford to lose $1,000, not can you afford to lose 10. So in this case, it makes it very easy to then make a decision with a lot less fear. So once you make an offer, you basically make this calculation, decide what that's worth to you, and you make a formal offer. But there's a few things you should know before making an offer to a jeweler, because you need to understand this, because there's a risk factor. You see, wiring money to a complete stranger or a business can be pretty dangerous, and you have to be careful about that. And there's a couple of things you need to know before doing that. First off, buy the seller. This is something a lot of people don't do, meaning, do you understand who is selling you the watch? How long have they been in business? Who are they? Do they have references? Meaning, can anybody vouch for them in watch groups on the internet? Do you know their cousin? Do you know their cousin's friend? Does someone, or has someone bought a watch from them before? Are they a big jewelry store? Can you Google them? Can you check the person's LinkedIn profile? These are all little things you can do to kind of understand the picture of who you're about to send money to. If there's a red flag, like let's say you're buying from a jewelry store and you Google their address and it shows their location's closed. If you Google their address and it shows their location is a mobile workspace in the middle of Atlanta, but they told you that they're in New Jersey, these are all red flags that basically should be huge, like, I can't wire this person any money because there's a huge risk factor. Now, in addition to that, you should also consider that you should actually know who you're dealing with on the other side. There's a lot of jewelers who may have fake scammers pretending to be them. While the jewelry store is real, the scammer you're talking to isn't actually the jeweler that's being portrayed. That's why it's so important to then look up specifically who is the salesperson you're talking to, who knows them, and is that indeed them? Did you call the store and check if they work there? Are they physically there or not, and so on and so forth. So you got to make sure you don't fall victim to a scam, right, more than anything else. And by buying the seller, because this is something that comes up a lot, people ask me, they go, well, how do you make sure you're not getting a fake or a replica? Because that's the most asked portion of the whole process, right? And the answer is quite simple. So at Watch Trading Academy, in our actual course where I break down how to actually buy, trade, and sell luxury watches, I walk you through a step-by-step process on how to authenticate any watch. In addition to that, I give you tools and strategies you can use to right away know if something's fake or not. But one of the things I do is actually what we do right here, buying the seller, ensuring that the person that sold you the watch is a reputable person that should have been selling you the watch. This matters a lot. And I say this because, in our business, reputation matters. And if you start screwing people or selling fakes, word travels fast. And as a result, people basically lose their ability to sell future watches. I cannot recommend it enough to ensure that if you're buying a watch from someone with a good reputation, who's a good seller, who has previously never screwed somebody in the business, has good references and everything is clean, it is worth paying a little bit more for the safety of the transaction, which is very, very important. The safety of the transaction matters. And in this particular case, it's very, very important to ensure that that happens. So buy the seller, do your reference check, and you'll never have to worry about a fake. Because even if you bought a fake, even if it slipped true like you see on the news or not, jewelers that are good and been in business for a while will always buy that fake back and never let you stuck with it because they don't want to lose their reputation over 5, 10, not even 100 grand, because it can cost them a lot more than that in the long term. So buy the seller, do the reference checks, ensure there are no red flags, and then basically do a wire transfer so that you can actually get your money. You can usually pay via wire, check, or whatever else based on your negotiations, and then shipping takes place. Now, the majority of watch dealers will ship a watch, and I'll go right here, with what we call an overnight insured third-party service that uses FedEx or UPS, where you'll receive the watch. It'll be insured the whole way. They'll send it to your residence, and most likely you're going to have to sign for the watch in order to receive it because it's a high-value good, and it'll be insured till the time you get it. Some of the key and very important concepts of actually purchasing a watch is what we call the inspection process after you received it. Now, you see, most jewelers will stand behind their watch because they've sold you a watch based on the description. If you didn't actually pay close attention to pictures, take a look at any scratches or anything, there are certain things that are displayed in photos, but certain things that really don't come out, or that they didn't know. Maybe when you're taking it apart, the crown breaks off and it didn't previously, and so on and so forth. But inspection needs to happen within 12 hours of receipt. Now, this is something a lot of people don't realize. They wear the watch for weeks and then, or leave it in their box for weeks, and then suddenly wear it and go, it doesn't work. I'd like some kind of refund or some kind of service for free after 6 months later after having bought a watch. And usually that is not the jeweler or the seller's liability. The seller's liability usually ends between 12 to 24 hours after the watch has been received and signed for. Now, if the watch is received and signed for, I always encourage you to send a message either thanking or letting them know that you received the good, inspected it, and everything is good to go. If you haven't, letting them know that, hey, I've received the watch, I'll be away from home for the next few days. I'll take a look at it once it's received, and I thank you again for shipping it. Once you receive it and actually take a look at it, play with the features. Turn the time, play with the chrono features, make sure it's fully wound. If you don't know how to use it, use Google, use YouTube, take a look at videos of how people have used this watch previously. Understand the watch, use the watch, and if one of the components of the watch is broken or damaged, then make a note and reach back out to the seller. Things such as the straps being damaged, the screws around the straps showing additional wear, scratches on the crystal, chrono features not working. These are very common issues of older watches and continuously remain a problem. Some watches even have aftermarket crystals. Tapping them helps you understand if the watch is indeed with a factory sapphire or an aftermarket sapphire, and allows you to then understand, especially if it's more common on certain watches against others. The main concept here is to understand that you only have a 12-hour window to really bring forward a complaint so that there is no specific dispute about you causing the problem with the watch itself. Now, it is very common that when you're brand new and buying your very first luxury watch, there's an excitement level and factor that comes into wearing the watch rather than inspecting the watch, and more importantly, actually Googling and YouTubing how the watch functions rather than forcing things through. Watches are instruments of precision and require you to use finesse when opening things and tearing things up. So don't use a huge screwdriver trying to open the box because it's taped well, or don't rush through this process by damaging the contents of the box, and inspect them very closely, inspect the watch, make it function, and then make a decision. And basically these are the steps, and the final step more than anything else is enjoy the watch. Watches are some of the most enjoyable things in the world to wear. They're a great networking tool. They're an incredible investment as well if they're the right ones. But more importantly, then one of the things I also recommend is once you're in that process, you've done it, there's a similar process to then getting rid of your watch and continuing and cycling through watches. But again, a lot more of that is described at Watch Trading Academy, where I teach you all the basics, regardless that you're wholesaling, trading, or investing, and everything you need to know to become a watch trading and investment expert. So that has been our step-by-step guide to how to buy your first luxury watch. Hope you've enjoyed it, and of course, if you want more content like this, please like, turn on notifications, and of course, leave a comment. Let me know if I missed something or something else you want to discuss, and I will catch you on the next video for Watch Trading Academy.